Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. The Republican candidate for president, Donald Trump, asked the African-American community, "What do you have to lose?" He says our schools are bad, our neighborhoods are not safe, we don't have jobs, and he can fix it. Interestingly, Trump makes this speech before predominantly white audiences, leaving many to believe that it's not about the black community at all. Is Donald Trump making any headway with African Americans? Well, ask our roundtable. Roger, Carol, Will, and Bill are here with analysis and insight. The Another View Roundtable is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
And what do you have to lose? Look, what do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose?
Wow, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. So what does the African-American community have to lose with Donald Trump as president? Let's ask our roundtable. Roger Chesley is a columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, and you can read his columns every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger.
Hey, Barbara. Only 60 more days or so of this craziness.
Absolutely. Carol Pretlow is a political science professor at Norfolk State University. Hey, Carol.
Hi, Barbara.
I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this. Bill Thomas is our resident community activist. Hello, Bill.
Good afternoon, Barbara.
How are you?
Hey, how are you? Ham-Lee. You looking beautiful as always.
Thank you very much, sir. And Wil LaVeist is here. He's a journalist, author, and host of The Wil LaVeist Show, heard Wednesdays on WHRV-FM, Hampton University Radio. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
That's great. Okay, so Carol Pretlow, what do we have to lose?
Well, first of all, I look at Mr. Trump's comments and I think of them in context. As you mentioned before we started, he was speaking to practically 93% white audience. When he comes to the African-American community itself, and I'm talking about the Urban League, the NAACP, black universities, he might get a different perspective. Now, I did some research and found some figures, and one was from the Department of Agriculture. And they do admit that there's a discrepancy between what the lows of the African American community and the predominant community. To the extent that you have 26% of blacks living in poverty, but then 15% of the country as a whole is in poverty. Now, Mr. Trump also failed to give attention to those people who are not living in poverty. So you can't have this monolithic idea of this is the black community. It is as diverse as other communities.
Mm-hmm. Roger, what do we have to lose?
There's an assumption sometimes that things will always progress, things will always get better just by the passage of time. It's not true. And as we know, with our long and troubled history in this country, that we can go backwards, and people who don't have us at heart or aren't really concerned about some of the things that are affecting us as a people can make things more difficult for African Americans, for Latinos in this nation. And so, yeah, you know, certain leaders might be able to make things better, but not this leader. Let's take a look at some of the things that he has said or he's been involved with involving race. He's been sued twice by the U.S. Justice Department for discrimination against black people. A former business associate said that Trump said that blacks have a lazy trait. Mm-hmm. He whipped up New Yorkers against the Central Park Five in 1989 in the so-called Wilding case. And these five young men, they weren't really men, they were teenagers at the time, were later found to be innocent. He's called Mexicans rapists, and he's proposed a ban on Muslims entering the U.S. This is the Republican leader, the white Republican leader that blacks should consider a changing stream with. And we're talking about Mitt Romney and John McCain, who reasonably had at least a little bit more inroads. They didn't do very well when they ran in terms of getting the black vote. It's tough to see why we should consider this individual as somebody that we should seriously consider, worthy of our votes.
Bill, he said 58% of our youth are unemployed. It's actually 18.7, but who's counting, right?
No, I
mean,
I need for you to go back, and I'll send it to you. Dr. Cook over at ODU did a report on the status of black African Americans in Hampton Roads, and you need to look at those statistics. I don't remember them actually, but you can look and see that the rates in certain areas in Harborview it's not 58 or 18%. In Virginia Beach, it's not those numbers either.
But he said the blacks. He said all of us.
I know. His language is crude, and it's not specific. But in terms of the reality, too many black folks, especially black young men, are not working. I just got in from Washington and other cities, and you can just see the whole town is pretty much void of African American men working. You don't see them. And black women doing fine and doing great, but there is a problem there.
But his question was, what do you have to lose?
What do you have to lose?
But I haven't heard him say.
Well, let me tell you what you have to lose. I'm reading the Daily Press. I'm looking at the August 31st article. Local news looks like Mississippi housing in the southeast side of. Is that correct, Barbara?
Yeah, that's the way it looks on that picture.
And with a little child standing out there. And this year alone, 19 African American children under the age of 17 have been shot or killed, and that's no different than in Chicago, where they have a number of folks that have been murdered on the streets by, unfortunately. No, let me finish. I'm going to get done.
Let him finish.
And we can go to Baltimore, or we can go other things. There is a problem in our community. There is a problem. And I think he is talking about it. And I don't want to hear about he got sued for housing. A lot of folks being sued for housing and discrimination, including black folks. And we can go down that list as well.
They're not running for president.
Well, they're not running for president, but if they choose to, they could. My point is, there is a problem. Our kids are not graduating from schools.
But I'll go back to my question to you, which is, what is he going to do about it?
What he's going to do? He's going to use, hopefully, free market business types of applications and get the government out of a lot of things with too much regulation by diminishing regulations.
Let him finish.
You can't do anything in life today without being regulated. Regulation is gone through, and then all of this socialization, politicizing things. You can't say certain things. You can't do certain things. You always have to be politically correct. I think that he's going to show leadership as a businessman, hopefully, God praying that he can focus on getting America on things that work with liberty, and that's the free enterprise system, and less versus more government. That is simple. That's all I'm looking for. I don't want to continue down the same path. We're not doing well. It's not the right direction, and I just think about and pray above all hope, we'll get back to basic things that has worked for all Americans, and especially the self-segregation that we're continuing to do.
Okay, let's come back to that in just a minute. I want to get from Will, what do we have to lose from your perspective?
I think what we have to lose is...
asking as he asked.
Black folks.
What do you have to do? As he asked. What do we have to do as black folks voting for Donald Trump? What do we have to lose?
Well, what we have to lose is that whether it's voting for Donald Trump or voting for Hillary Clinton, if we don't deal with the issues that Donald Trump is actually bringing to the forefront, and if our leaders don't leverage our voting power to actually get some meaningful policies in return on that investment, we have to lose to maintain the status quo, which is the continuing gaps and disparities in wealth, health, education that are continuing to plague us. Because what we're doing is we're focusing, as you heard Roger saying, we're focusing on the messenger and whether he's qualified. I personally don't believe he's qualified to be president. There's nothing there that says he's qualified to be president. But we're focusing on that and not actually what he's saying, and then not holding the feet to the fire of the people who are in position to implement policy, to leverage it, and actually get some meaningful legislation, some meaningful policies that's going to move the needle. That's what we had to lose.
Okay, Bill?
I agree.
see you over there.
For the most part, I agree with Will. And sometimes when we go back and forth in banner, there's some separation in terms of how we get there. But at the end of the day, I think we've been pretty much right there in terms of what needs to be done. We can't continue to do what we're doing. At least he is talking. I'm going to let you make me right or wronger. But what I'm saying is the fact that what I think is the Democrats have got to make, or at least black folks got to make the Democrats hold them accountable for what's being done. HBCUs cannot lose $250 million of funding. They can't get rid of Parent Plus loans. They have decimated HBCUs.
And you think he will restore those if he got into office?
I think he would go more free market. The Republicans are the ones who got most of this stuff started anyhow to try to get black folks into the business, into the education and things. But we, as a self-interested person, you can't do free colleges and universities. Black schools will be gone. And you'll lose the dynamics, and the ones that are not competitive will be gone. But what I'm saying is the fact that we should be competitive, but we have to have the instrumentation and the policies directed at this particular group so we can move up and forward.
So, for example,
and then I'm coming to you, Carol.
So, for example, earlier this year, focusing on Virginia, Senator Louise Lucas raised the issue that members of the Black Caucus within the General Assembly are not being heard.
Absolutely.
Voices are not being respected. Okay? Now you have an opportunity where you can seriously lose this election and Trump can potentially really be president. Are you going to leverage that to actually get some meaningful policies, some meaningful legislation, a civil rights agenda? Some people are throwing around a lot of these phrases, civil rights agenda for the city or whatever. We know and have studied these issues. Who is going to actually get the leverage this moment? Because it's an opportunity. All these crisis opportunities, it's really an opportunity for real change. Who's going to leverage it? Or are we just going to continue to say, well, Trump is just gaming the system. Is this all gay? Is this all... Where's that? That's what we have to lose. That we're just going to continue down the same path. It'll be no improvement.
So, Carol, go ahead. You wanted to say something.
I think both of you make great points, and I think that if both candidates would come up with some specific policy agendas and some specific policies that they want to implement. Okay, start with education. What am I going to do about it? Come up with some ideas. Come to the table with something. Don't keep describing the problem. Give us some information about how you're going to resolve it.
So, Roger, how do we get it past the personalities in this race and push voters to truly asking the types of questions that Bill and Will and Carol raised?
Those are important questions, but one of the main questions that we have before us in November is who is most likely to keep our interests at heart. And if I look at the two main candidates, not even looking at the third-party candidates, I know which one I think has my best interests at heart because of a lifetime of doing certain activities, having certain issues that they've championed, and one who really hasn't cared about me. So, I mean, I start from there because that's the question that's going to be before me on November 8th.
In the voting booth.
Yeah,
so
and one other thing, quick thing. You're talking about concrete policies. One of the candidates has given concrete policies on a lot of issues, and I fault the news media, of which I'm a part, of spending too much time on the zaniness of the Republican nominee instead of dealing with the fact that he is not giving concrete solutions or like his military proposals the other day, talking about getting more ships and doing other things. Well, how are you going to pay for all that? Let's be serious. Let's have a level of seriousness. And the media have not been doing, our job in forcing him to come out with some serious proposals on what he's going to do and how he's going to pay for it.
When you go to his website also, which I did this morning, when you're reading the information on certain areas, I noticed, which I thought was very interesting since he found it interesting to talk to groups about the blacks, but there's nothing on his website that addresses the issues that he's talking about.
No,
Bill.
I'll let Will go first now.
Okay,
Well,
Will.
I was going to say is that, again, Roger outed himself about being with the media who's failed to deal with the issues. I've talked about that before, and I think that one of the reasons that we're here in this unconventional situation is because the current, on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, in terms of how they've been running the nation, running our states, has not worked. And the media has been complicit in it and focusing on the zaniness. And again, my question is, who within the political structure, within the leadership, is going to wheel and deal in the legislature, in Congress, to get some meaningful, real things passed?
So your
Like, for
point
example,
is that the down ballot is almost more important than the
down ballot,
is
or
very-
where these decisions
Really
are
made.
made. For example, why President Obama has had such difficulty in getting things passed that he has talked about is because of divided Senate, Congress, and people being and his inability. A lot of people would criticize his inability to really get in there and get a deal done and wheel and deal and make something move. So let me come back to something Roger said about Trump's background and history. Did Lyndon Baines Johnson have any background, as far as we know? I haven't done the research.
Zero.
Have any history of being someone who was a champion
Absolutely
of black
not.
rights?
He's
But
gonna
what
be-
happened when he needed to
vote.
wheel and deal and move the country
Country.
in a direction
He made the
and
deals.
moral, and people talking to him and saying, Lyndon, look, we need to get this done. This is good for the nation. That's what we need. That's somebody's got to start talking about that and making some guarantees. And we had too many leaders who are sitting around maintaining their own positions and they're not demanding anything. And Roger's media, because I talk about this stuff on my show, you talk about it on yours, but him and his columns and his media, they don't write about this stuff. And this
Now,
is
is it
why.
fair to say his columns?
His columns too. He could defend his
No,
columns,
but-
this is why we had the Bernie movement and you got the Trump movement.
And
this is why.
And he is right on the mark. I don't give a darn about these establishment Republicans. You got Congressman Forbes, who ran into a gerrymandered district where black folks were left out. He was all happy with it. And then when they made it fair, then he's not happy with it. I'm not happy with him. Yeah, I told him I was going to vote for him. I was going to write him in the 4th District, where he should have been. So, it's these. I'm not talking about Democrats or Republicans. And you're saying, what are we doing differently than we're doing now? We're actually, and I'm spending a whole lot of time writing legislation because that's why I wanted to be a delegate. So I can support programs like the great program you're doing at Norfolk State. We do great things in Hampton, but you teach some kids who need to have the extra help. You need to be paid for that. And so what we're trying to do is to kick the apple cart. We can't go with Hillary Clinton. She and her husband put all on these draconian laws, and she called us extreme predators. And Bill Clinton, you hear what he said about violence and things when he was president. But what I'm saying, Barbara, neither side has helped us. We need, and you took my analogy, you stole it from me, people who didn't have all these experiences but made the deals and did the things. And I don't care if it's Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders, we have to go a different way. And that's why I want somebody to kick the table over. I'm through with the establishment Republicans. Lord knows I'm done with the liberal Democrats. And so we need to do something.
Bobby Scott is at a Youth Promise program sitting
Good.
that could be a
Thank you.
good
8
program
years.
that can make a difference.
And
what is his colleagues? I mean,
Walked away from
is
it.
nobody getting anything done?
Okay,
Come on.
so but the question then becomes the voters, because clearly if people who are in office aren't doing what they're supposed to do, then the way to get them out of office is to vote in someone else, right?
Right.
Okay, let's listen to a bite from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar about what he thinks about voters.
Ignorance is not something that lends itself to a meaningful discussion. Some of these people really shouldn't vote because they don't know what the issues are. And I think people that are, voting in the blind are doing a disservice to our country by not being better informed.
Roger?
I was stunned when he said that. Because as he well knows, as educated a man as Kareem is, he knows that that type of mentality, that type of thinking was used to keep black and brown people from the polls for so many times. And who is the arbiter as to
who's the intelligent one?
Who's intelligent, whether you're making an informed choice or not? I think that's going down a very bad road that we don't want to go into. Yes, I think we should learn as voters everything that we need. But it's not just the president that we're voting for in November. We're also voting for congressmen. We're also, in certain places, we'll also have local elections. So, and as we all know, the local and the state elections generally have more to do with your day-to-day life than what's going on at the federal level. So to even suggest something like that, I was somewhat stunned. Now, maybe this is another instance of trying to kick over the apple cart, but for sure, certain classes of people are going to be encouraged to get to the polls. Others aren't. So I was somewhat disturbed that Kareem would suggest.
Carol, what happens if we don't? If we as African Americans don't go to the polls this election?
Well, see, I hate to be specific. If we don't go, then we are likely to have the very person that we don't want in terms of the White House, in terms of Congress, et cetera. And then when it looks at spiraling down, when you look at the issues, they're going to support policies and perspectives that we don't agree with. The educational cycle, I think, is very important. And I'm not talking just about, getting a degree and that sort of thing, but I'm looking at organizations, Urban League, NAACP, Black Lives Matter, to get in the communities individual by individual and say, I'm going to help out here. Now, it might mean that you spend a lot of time, and we've got about 6,000 individuals in Norfolk State. We can train, which we are doing. We have a community worker and a person from Norfolk State who is working with students. Professor Geraldine Hunt is working with students to educate them, to get them to the polls. And I think we're going to have to start from the ground up and move up.
Will,
and you're shaking your head no.
Well, hang on, Will. Do you worry that we as a people thought 2008 and 2012 were more important in terms of our voting because it was Barack Obama and we won't show up at the polls this time?
Well, yeah, I know that in the Democratic circles, that's very much a concern. I covered Barack Obama's, the president's election in 2008. A lot more excitement. I was at the DNC then. I was at the DNC in Philly this time. The level of excitement is not the same. So that's a major concern. But I wasn't stunned by what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said.
Me neither.
I don't know if the context of what he said was he specifically talking about African Americans, but I think again he was at the DNC supporting Hillary Clinton, and I think what he's getting at is that the uninformed voter is more likely to vote for Donald Trump. The uninformed voter is more likely to just make an emotional decision rather than a formed decision like what we're having here and saying, okay, for example, my decision will likely end up being based on who do I want to make the next Supreme Court justice decision.
Exactly.
That alone is going to call it for me. But if you're not informed, if you don't understand that that's at stake, Kareem is saying you might as well just step out because his thinking is that you're probably going to end up voting for Trump, who he's not supporting. And that's where I think he was coming from.
Roger.
Yeah, it was clear the subtext of what Kareem was saying, that he felt that too many white voters were voting for somebody who really hasn't had their interests all along at the forefront. However, I think what people are going to hear a lot of times are, well, if Kareem is saying, if I'm a black individual and Kareem is saying I'm not informed and maybe I shouldn't go to the polls, maybe it's okay.
There is the problem. Yeah. But there is the problem. We focused way too much on race. I think Kareem is well beyond that. Mm-hmm. Black Lives Matter. No, all lives matter. Now, for these young people doing this Black Lives Matter thing is fine. I encourage them to do that. I very much encourage them to do that. But no, I got a voice, and I'm telling you.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, all lives matter. If some white person is starving or poor or getting mistreated.
I don't think that the Black Lives Matter movement says that.
I'm not happy to have that argument.
Okay.
I'm just saying, as somewhat trying to keep up on things, that I still believe my theory is all lives matter. But let's get back to what we're talking about, low information voters. I don't think that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was talking about that. He was talking about white folks and others as well. But at the end of the day, I think the Supreme Court selection is a good vote and a reason to vote. I'm looking at economic and using the business and the free market system to more drive it with deals that are being made because it's been good for America. I think that's a better path. But what I'm also saying is the fact that if I'm just voting for somebody because of what they're saying they're going to do and then go the same way we've been going, I'm done with it.
Okay, hang on a second if you're just joining us. We're talking about the 2016 presidential campaign with Roger Chesley with the Virginian-Pilot, Carol Pretlow with NSU, community activist Bill Thomas, and journalist, author, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. Let's talk to Bianca from Norfolk. Hi, Bianca, you're on the air.
Hi, I just had a comment on the fact that free market being the solution to lower the unemployment rate within the black community. It's a fact that we are in a globalized economy that we're not going to remove ourselves from. It's a globalized economy that Trump has supposedly done very well in. And to say that we're going to use free markets and free market strategies to lower unemployment, I feel is a little bit of a naive thing to say, because most of our jobs, when he brings up NAFTA or when he brings up TPP and how we've lost all these jobs, those just didn't magically disappear. They weren't sent over by the government. It was the markets who saw that they had a better deal outside of the nation that sent those jobs elsewhere for cheaper labor. So are we going to be doing a race to the bottom so that black communities and other communities, period, in this nation have to lower their wages to make it better? Because to me, that would be impossible. It's expensive just to live life with what we have now.
Okay, Bianca, thanks so much for your call. Will?
I was going to say, she makes an excellent point, which supports what Kareem is saying. Unless you understand what she just said, you'll hear one candidate saying, I'm going to bring jobs back. I'm going to bring jobs back. You'll get emotional, and then you're just going to vote based on that. But when you understand what she's talking about, and you understand, for example, we know that there are studies that show that when resumes come in based on how someone's name is, their resume, if it's perceived that it's a black name, it'll get kicked out the system. How's a free market system going to change that? Those are the kinds of things that we need
Back to the
get
racism.
kicked in and to address institutional racism to make it change. Because a free market system is not going to change that.
Can I just make one point before we go any further?
That's just an example.
She has a false premise.
And why is
Jobs were lost in America, I would say 90% due to automation, due to technology. You know, technology does so much and does so much work these days that you can't even tell what it does now.
Well, if that were the case, but why do these companies go out to other countries?
Well, I can tell
if
you.
It's just because of technology.
Because America probably ranks 18th or 19th in math and science skills, and the other countries like Germany and India and even Russia and China. Do you know who one of the largest contractors for the federal government in America is? Russia. And India we got to build up technologies. We got to do the education thing.
In what business? What do you mean?
Oh, just government buying government services, contracting. All these kinds of things we do. Just go look and see.
Russia
what our
is the largest.
Not the largest, one of the largest. They're in the top 20 of government contracts. Let's say the top 50. But they're a large contracts with the government. So is India, so is all these other countries, because they have a solid group, especially in China, with 2 billion people. They have an emerging middle class, about 260 million of their citizens that are fully educated. And she's right. That's what's driving the jobs over there to these other countries.
And that's why, Barbara, I say quickly, why Kareem's point is valid. It's more complex.
We agree.
It's more complex than immigrants are taking your jobs. I'm going to make America great again. We're going to bring jobs back home.
But Roger, in all elections, doesn't it really come down, or hasn't it come down to the soundbite at some point?
It often is emotional. how many black people went to the polls for the first time in 2008 because somebody black finally had a chance to become president?
Yeah.
So we know that emotion, as well as reason, play a role in this. So I don't want to get too hung up into what Kareem was saying, because I believe people need to vote because you have a chance to impact your interests and you should become informed. But not everybody's going to become informed the way that they should be. But we do have the opportunity to go vote, and I think we have a stake in who gets elected, especially on the local and state level, because those are things that have a more direct outcome in how our daily lives are affected.
All right, go ahead, Carol. You want to make one last point on this?
I agree, and I think when we're talking about it and we think about people who have not had a history of getting involved, maybe if we start at very small level, so, okay, you're going to vote in this election. Hopefully that will give them the incentive to continue and to realize the things they don't know. So, okay, next time I'm going to learn more about this, and it's a pathway, a beginning. You're not going to get it all at one time, but you're going to begin the process.
My point is, it's not the messenger, it's the message. And the only thing that we have to discern with now is what's going to take us to where we need to be to have some livable conditions for everybody to have a fair opportunity.
Okay, so there are surrogates that both sides of the aisle use, both candidates use in order to speak for them when they are unavailable. And Mr. Trump had a surrogate, Pastor Mark Burns. So before we talk about what happened with him, let's take a listen.
Lock him up.
What I'm saying is this: in reference to my website, if there's inaccurate information on there that can easily be manipulated by other people, and it can be manipulated by hackers. People can do and say and do and create whatever they want to create.
Again, the website's host says there is no evidence of a hack.
I don't feel comfortable at all. This is not...
You also claim to be studying at the Anderson Theological Seminary.
Yes, I did.
Currently working on his Master of Theology and Pastoral Leadership, according to the church's website.
We called them, you're not enrolled there, and you enrolled in 2008 and never advanced.
Right, but you know how old this is? This has been updated. I think there's an updated profile on me that's on the website.
So is it old or is it tampered?
These are old information. This is extremely old information.
Seconds later.
This is thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming. You just take this.
Pastor Burns walked out.
You know, when I saw the story and I saw what happened to him, from a journalist perspective, I have never seen someone leave their establishment. Usually they kick the media out of their own establishment, but he left his own house.
This is simple, Barbara.
What lying?
Liar. Lock him up.
He needs lying 101.
No, lock him up fast.
So, but the bigger question is, I cannot believe, because I was listening to others from the Trump campaign about Pastor Burns and what happened and about the vetting process. And they jumped all over it, but never answered the question about whether or not this gentleman had actually ever been vetted to speak for him, supposedly, to our community. And so that's problematic for me. Yeah. What do you think, Will? You're a journalist. I know, you can only chuckle because
all I could do is just pray for him.
No, lock him up. No, lock his ass up. I'll lock him up.
It shows how much, out of touch, that camp obviously is. And again, people's sort of motives for why they do things. I mean, I'm thinking about what is her name that was on the Apprentice? His Omarosa.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Omarosa, who is a minister herself, ought to know in those circles sort of who is who and sort of be able to verify. It's not a difficult thing to do. She should have been able to do that. And this guy clearly just, he just wants to be in a game and wants to get his own limelight and, has a gift of gab as Trump does. and he gabbed his way into the RNC, speaking there at the podium. I'm like, how is this guy? How does this happen? But
Roger, wasn't he a part of the 100 ministers who met with Trump? I believe.
I don't know that.
Okay.
I do. Now he came under fire also for either posting or tweeting something with Hillary Clinton in blackface.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And so he was, that was beyond the pale. Shouldn't have been done. He wouldn't be the first person, unfortunately, who exaggerated on his or her resume. We know this. But the problem is when you start getting some notoriety, then people start checking you out. They start looking into you.
Absolutely.
And you need to kind of have your stuff together when you do go into the limelight. And is this going to hurt Trump in the long run? No, it won't. But it says something about when you have folks like this speaking for you, and then they're not always exactly the best person to kind of be carrying your brand.
So, Bill, is this yet another representation of disrespect to the African American community? I mean, it's funny, we laugh about it, but at the same time,
yes, absolutely.
For them to send him out to talk to specifically our community, so to speak.
Absolutely. And it's a bad, terrible tendency for the Republican Party to do this year after year, after decade after decade after decade. You have folks that don't understand what's going on at all, and the true messengers, the true people that can tell you what you need to do, what the policies you need to address, they'll go around and get these folks that don't have any really clue of what the black community needs to do, never lived in the black community, or don't have any of the credentials that they need to do. And it's not like Romney. Romney didn't reach out to nobody. There was nobody, no way in the world I was going to vote for him. He never asked me for my vote, for his vote. So this is the same thing. It's unfortunately with the Trump organization, hopefully they can get it a little bit more together. You got to reach out. You got to go to the community. You got to go to the churches. You got to go do the thing so you'll be a authentic applier for someone.
And he's doing that. He spoke he made it with leaders in North Philadelphia.
He's doing it now.
He's meeting. He was over in Cleveland. Just recently, he's over in.
Well, of course, and he was in Detroit last.
He was in Detroit. But I mean, his last stop was in Cleveland, I believe.
But the issue is, if you're already grounded in those things, you don't need to go searching for it when you finally decide that you want to make run for national office, and that's a part of the problem. If this is all strange to you,
it is.
Then you're already starting from a deficit when you say, why don't you try something different? Well, you haven't really had our interest at heart in the whole all along, so why should we listen to you?
But does he deserve some credit for making an outreach?
Yes.
And how different and is it better to go to the black church and pander and sound like a good preacher and then not do anything?
Well, but here's the other question also.
Is that better? That's what Democrats do, right?
No.
Go ahead. And let's let Roger answer.
I would say that we're upset because we don't feel that Democrats have done everything that they should have done. But I know that the other party, I'm not expecting them to do anything. No. So that's why I usually don't look to them.
No.
We often, let me just say this real quick. We often are harder on the people that we think should do better. But then we let the people that we don't expect anything from, we let them off the hook. And I think that that's a problem.
What Mr. Donald J. Trump is doing, he has brought up a reasonable argument as to how he figures that this segment of the community can prosper in America. He's got his way of looking at it.
But Bill, he didn't.
And he has reached out. I think it should be deeper. I think it should be deeper in the roots. It should be deeper in the roots. But he is reaching out, and I agree with my good friend Wil in that case, and he should be complimented for that. But there's much more work to do.
Go ahead, Roger.
We can promise all sorts of things, but track records.
Well, tell the Democrats.
Wait a minute. We can promise all sorts of things, but track records we can actually look at and say, what have you done? And he hasn't done anything.
So, Barbara, my argument is that this is an opportunity to leverage
you're
and actually get something done, because what Roger is saying, you haven't done anything. Why should we listen to you? And then we go back to the same thing of no results that Louise Lucas was talking about.
Okay, and I get
I'm saying leverage it and let's do something.
Then. So if people that Donald Trump is listening to, if Mark Burns is a representation of who he's listening to, how are we ever going to get that leverage?
That's a false premise.
Why?
That's a false premise.
Why? Who else has he brought out that has street creds, if you will, in terms of policy and politics?
He listened to a lot of people, but I think the people that handle him will not allow the people that are really going to get into the grassroots of what needs to be done to be out front like this clown was.
Okay, so you think behind the scenes he's listening to black folks
things,
he's hearing and they're telling him what we need in order to be.
I've been engaged in this for years.
Okay.
And I've been a Republican ever since the day I was born in Kansas because blacks and Republicans are birthed there. So I understand it just from that stance alone because Republicans freed the slaves.
Right, so that's what I'm asking. What Will is talking about, who's talking to him?
I've gone through a whole lot of stuff. I've never seen anyone in a campaign more interested in real deals. Okay. What it's going to take. How can you help? How can you help what's in our best interest? Public schools. Our schools are broken in certain zip codes.
Okay, who is he talking to, Bill?
Again, I can give you a list of names. I know a group of guys that are really taking it to.
You sound like Trump. I got a plan. I'm just not telling you
because
yet.
Here's the point. You can point to give the Democrats some credit here. At least who Hillary is talking to in terms of advisors and so forth.
I'm going to agree with you.
Who is Trump talking to?
There hasn't been a list that's been displayed in public that should be. That hasn't been done.
Okay.
And I don't have the authority to go out and say it. See, I'll just tell you like it is.
Okay, but you're saying that you have knowledge that it is happening?
I have knowledge that it's happening, not to the extent that it should. And I think some of the people, like Amberosa and all those folks, don't understand in the weeds policies that need to be done. What kind of laws that we need to get incorporated. Now, I do know there's 2 laws that we're working on. I'm going to send them to you. That's going to try to support HBCUs and what we're doing, try to get our funding restored, and try to do some other things like charter schools and other things that are laboratory schools where teaching universities like Hampton University and Norfolk State and others can start educating kids that look like us and live with us and that we understand to laboratorily look at what their deficiencies are to get them into the United States of America processes so they can prosper and be safe.
Trump has been talking about school choice and charter school. That's one of the things he's been talking about because one of the main points is that why talk about HBCUs if the K through 12 system doesn't work? They're not going to come to the HBCUs ready. And let's be honest, a lot of black students are not going to HBCUs.
So we're talking.
They're also going to other schools.
Yeah.
So
but you're right, Barbara. I'll give you everybody. I can't give you that answer.
Let's talk to Travis from Norfolk. Hi, Travis. You're on the air.
I just wanted to make a comment on Trump's question about what do you have to lose. Mm-hmm. And I think the panel had a hard time coming up with some more concrete things. I think 2 extremely important issues are the appointment of Supreme Court justices.
We said that.
We did talk about that. That's okay. Come on. What else?
Specifically, the further erosion of the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search and seizures. And a rollback of the Voting Rights Act.
That ain't going to get rolled back.
Okay. Thank you, Travis, for your call.
That's never going to get rolled back. Voting, how's that going to get rolled back?
It's already been rolled back.
How's it rolled back? Didn't the court just overturn North Carolina's just more documents that they want you to show and more ID that they want you to...
You're familiar with the Supreme Court ruling a few years ago that gutted a lot of the pre-clearance sections? I think that was a 2013 ruling. It was a 5-4 split decision. We're already seeing...
How is that denying me the right to vote? How is that as a black man right here, right now?
It's made it more difficult in a lot of cases for certain states. I'll send you some of the columns I've written about this bill, but it's made it more difficult for generally African Americans, Latinos, and the poor and the elderly to vote in certain states where pre-clearance used to be required.
Which is the reason why North Carolina passed the laws that they did.
I understand.
And they wound up having to go because that section was taken out on the federal level.
And then some of these things actually have made it back to the Supreme Court now for review.
North Carolina?
Some of these things have now made it back to the Supreme Court for review. but it's being 4-4 at the Supreme Court now because because of the death of Antonin Scalia.
Here's what I know. I can take my driver's license and another piece of ID, walk down.
You can do that. Everybody can't do that.
I don't understand why you don't have any kind of. How can you live? You can't go to the grocery store. You can't even give the bank cash anymore. If you go try to make a deposit in a bank with cash, because I tried to send my daughter $500 so she could go to something, and they asked me for ID to put cash in her account.
Well, another example is right here in Virginia. Isn't there a move, Carol, right now in Virginia to make it more difficult for the governor to be able to restore felons' voting rights?
Right.
So if African Americans are disproportionately affected by that, and 40 other states allow them to get their rights back, that's an example. That's a Republican move that's happening to have a constitutional amendment. So those are the kinds of things, to the caller's point, that we had.
Right now, how are the Republicans creating an atmosphere that's making the governor not be able to do his job with relate to restoring voters' rights?
Well,
right
they're
now,
trying to have a constitutional amendment.
They're trying to change the amendment.
That ain't going to go. That is not going to happen.
It won't go while he's governor. It won't happen while he's governor because he'll veto it.
I understand. So it's not going to happen.
His veto will be sustained while he's governor. But what about the guy who comes in next?
Yeah.
And, Republicans have been fighting allowing him to en masse restore lots of felons' voting rights. They're making him do it one by one.
One by one. Right.
I am not trying to be holier than thou. I'm truly not trying to be.
That would be a switch.
No. Hey, I throw no stones. I live in glass houses. How about not committing these crimes and these felonies? How about going to school, free public schools that are free, that you can go and get educated? How about going getting 2 pieces of ID so you can go vote? How about your church open up a voter registration office in the church to help the elderly and the sick and the folks that don't have these things? Now, I know that there's a lot of things that this racist Commonwealth years and years ago and somewhat today institutionally, we agree with that, has done to harm black people and is still happening. But there's some things that we need to look internal, to look and raise your kids up, obey the law.
I agree with you.
I mean, I don't understand some of this stuff.
Okay, Bill, I agree with you on that. But I just want to make this one last point, and then we're going to go off to our last topic.
Yes,
and that point is, how about allowing someone to serve their time and come back into the community and be a productive citizen?
Like 46 other states allow.
I don't have a problem with that.
With that, let's move on. Okay.
All right, Barbara.
Colin Kaepernick, NFL quarterback for San Francisco 49ers, his protest, he took a knee with the veterans. He sat during the national anthem. Your thoughts? Is it effective? Should athletes be involved? What do you think, Roger?
Yeah, athletes should be involved because they have the platform to do it. Unfortunately, more is being made about his act than what that act was supposed to represent, which is there are some inequities in this country that we're not dealing with, and he wanted to bring attention to it, and now more is being focused on him and whether or not you stand, then what about what the underlying causes are? And which is, I think, sometimes why some athletes and some celebrities are reluctant to do what he did.
Mm-hmm. Carol?
Well, I applaud him, and I agree with that we should not focus just on him, but what he was standing for, or what he was trying to say by his action. And I agree perfectly. It's a form of free speech. He had that right, and I applaud him for exercising it.
Mr. Thomas.
My mama had one of those things. There's a time and place for everything. Time and place for everything.
And so you think this is a stage that he had?
No, I don't. I think I'm going to say he believes what he did.
Oh, okay.
I just say the time and place wasn't correct. You have a lot of people there that have different opinions. He's an entertainer. People are coming there to be entertained, and veterans and people that love the country in their own special way come there to do that. We stand up. out of respect for our veterans, our dead, lost their limbs, and all the people who've stood, the firefighters, the policemen that have done their jobs, we honorably show them respect by placing our heart on our head and saluting them.
Our hand on our heart.
Excuse me. Our hand on our heart.
Handkerchiefs on our head.
Maybe we should. But I'm saying that I think by him doing this public demonstration was disrespectful. Very, very disrespectful for the people who have lost loved ones, people who have been harmed, people who have come back with lost limbs. I just think that wasn't the time and the place, and I think it was very disrespectful, and if he continues to do it in that forum, but if he wants to come out and stand outside the stadium or come in some line, I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with him.
I understand that I mispronounced his name, so Lisa, tell me in my ear, please, so I can say it correctly. His name is Colin, not... What did I say? I said Colin.
Colin Powell.
Colin. I apologize. Colin Kaepernick.
Very good.
There we go. Will.
Oh, I stand with the veterans who have stood in support of him. A lot of people, and Bill has repeated that, has said that we stand in honor of the veterans and the people. The national anthem and the flag belongs to the people.
Amen.
All of the people of the United States. And people have twisted it to mean that if you have a disagreement with your nation, that you're automatically disrespecting the veterans. If you heard what Colin Kaepernick said, he talked about how one of the issues that he has is veterans dying, putting their lives on the line, and then coming back home and being killed or not getting the services and treatment that they deserve. So what are we doing as a nation when we're playing these games with liberty, justice, and equality, and then very people that we put out there at harm's way, we're not taking care of them? That was one of the points that he made. So I stand with those who, and his absolutely is right to say what he has, and I think that it's been good that it's shifted.
All right,
right now his jersey is #1 seller. Other people who have come out in support of him, I think, is good.
We got less than a minute, so just one word to encourage people to become informed. Say, what do you want to say? To tell them to
read,
vote?
Learn, don't just be emotional.
Okay.
Donald J. Trump.
Carol?
I had to agree with Bill against Donald J. Trump.
Roger.
Since Will said read, I'll say think.
Okay.
Read and think. Absolutely. Roundtable, you guys are fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate that.
Good show.
And I do want to take one moment though. When you talked about the Black Lives Matter, can I give a quick analogy for you that I want you to think about for next time? Okay. The entire body, right? If your arm hurts, it needs immediate attention. Correct? Okay, so just think about that. At any rate, I do want to remind our audience. I want to remind our audience that our first town hall, Race Let's Talk About It town hall, will be happening on October the 1st at Virginia Wesleyan College at Boyd Hall from 2:30 until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And our topic is Standing Together in a Culture of Fear. And we hope that you will come out and join us. You do need to register, so go to whro.org/talkaboutrace. And I hope I see you then. And we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Another View's Roundtable. If you want to hear it again or share it with a friend, check out our website, anotherviewradio.org. Next week, we talk with author Monique Morris about her new book, Push Out, The Criminalization of Black Girls in School. Some very interesting research she's done about our young ladies. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Nicholas Thomas answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.